Look, up in the sky. It's a bird.
It's a plane!
It's a Superman ranking podcast. I'm your host Jordan, and welcome to The Never-Ending Battle, the podcast where you follow me on my personal journey to find the best Superman story of all time. Now, to best achieve this mission, each episode I review 3 Superman stories, or, his extended family, and rank them from best to worst. And for today, on my quest for the best Superman story of all time, I'm taking a look at something a little bit different. Instead of Superman, we are going to take a look today at the Maid of Steel, the last daughter of Krypton, the woman of tomorrow. That's right, Supergirl. So it's obvious that Supergirl is probably the most famous member of the Superman family besides Superman himself. You could probably debate about Superboy, but that gets kind of weird. Now, her publication history is unfortunately a lot messier. See, it used to be very simple when it comes to Supergirl. In her first appearance in 1959, she appears in Action Comics as a regular feature. Then she would go on to Adventure Comics with Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes, and even have multiple series of her own until the character's death in 1986 during the final 8 issues of Crisis on Infinite Earths, specifically Crisis on Infinite Earths number 7. She dies. And post-Crisis, we end up getting this edict that Superman should be the only Kryptonian left. Editorial mandates are strong here. But the power trademark is stronger. So DC eventually decides, hey, we need to create a Supergirl. So they use Matrix from a pocket universe that will later fuse with a woman named Linda Danvers to create another Supergirl. And of course, now this all gets reverted when Jeff Loeb and Michael Turner decide to restore Kara Zor-El back to the canon in 2004 Superman Batman, the Supergirl from Krypton storyline. Now, the lengths that DC will go to fix the crisis without actually fixing it, it goes unmatched. As we've seen in our previous episode, 2000s is when we start seeing DC really start reverting a lot of those Silver Age elements back into Superman family. So yeah, what began as a simple concept, Superman, but a girl, became a total mess. And that brings us to our first story, or I should say stories of the night, because we're going to do a double feature of some early Silver Age Supergirl stories with the Supergirl from Krypton and The Secret of the Super Orphan. Both were featured in Action Comics, specifically Supergirl from Krypton is Action Comics number 252, written by Otto Binder, art is Al Plastino. He also did the inks. No colorist or letterer credited, with editor of Mort Wessinger. And The Secret of the Super Orphan, Action Comics number 253, also written by Otto Binder. The art duties are taken over by Jim Mooney, who's also the inker. And again, no colorist or letterer credited. And again, also the editor is Mort Wessinger. Both stories were published in May and June of 1959, respectively. Plot. Great row. It's a ship not unlike the one that carried Superman to Earth as a child. What is with this? It's a Supergirl. Behold the great mysteries of the Super Orphan from Krypton. These are basic story guys here, folks. These are simple 10 to 12 page features in Action Comics. So let's talk about them. The first story, obviously, is Supergirl from Krypton. That is straight up the origin of Supergirl. These 2 stories, I picked them and put them together because, well, they largely just work as the origins of the character. The first one is just that, the origin. We kind of get the whole premise. We get all that. So the origin of Supergirl, the Silver Age origin, her original origin, it's not unlike what you've seen if you saw the Supergirl movie this past summer. But the origin of Supergirl is basically this. Her father, Zor-El, and the home city of Argos were ejected from Krypton during the explosion. And thanks to Zor-El's skills and talent as a scientist, he helped maintain the atmosphere, provide food and stuff like that. And it was doing pretty good. Things are largely fine on the floating city of Argos until it is revealed that the ground had quickly become kryptonite during their space travel and has begun to poison all the Kryptonians. They quickly cover the ground in sheets of lead, and hey, it's good. Zor-El marries Honora, and they have a daughter named Kara. Now, this is all great and good until a meteor shower destroys the lead containment that is surrounding the city of Argos' soil, and with most of the population dying of radiation and kryptonite poison, Zor-El opts to send his daughter to Earth to beat her cousin Kal-El, which they were able to see with a telescope. And part of these were pieced together from both Action Comics 252 and Action Comics 253. It kind of changes a little bit. There's some small tweaks between them. But yeah, pretty much that's it. They have Kara. She's not on Krypton. and she's not originally there. She's born on Argos, away from Krypton, and she is aware of Kryptonian culture, but she's not of Krypton. She is of Krypton, not but in the same way of like Clark. So the origin presented here is not too far off from the current one, which we'll see in the next story of the night. But there are small tweaks worth pointing out. Again, this version of Charon is born post Kryptonian doom. And again, in 2004, we actually see this updated to where she's actually older than Kal-El and is witnessed some aspect of Krypton's doom. Even 2004's origin gets tweaked several times, where whether or not she actually sees all of Kryptonian's doom, but she is actually older than Kal-El, and that she was supposed to be sent to Earth shortly after him to help take care of Kal-El, help be like a guardian. And always something happens, and it creates and she's not able to go. The 2004 origin, which we'll talk about later in this episode, it's a small tweak. But ultimately, this creates a problem. My issue with the modern origin of Supergirl has a really tricky timing problem. It makes sense that if she is older than Kal-El and she takes longer to get to Earth, she will be younger than Kal-El because Kal-El is on Earth. And Einstein's theory of relativity states how basically if you're traveling at a certain speed, he's assumed to travel at faster than light or close to light speed and land on Earth, he is going to be non-aged practically. He's still going to be a baby when he lands on Earth. When Kara comes in later, she's traveled implied to be somewhat slower, takes a wormhole detour, her ship has a failure to launch. There's a million reasons why she doesn't get to Earth right away, and as a result, she's younger. She's older first. She has her birthdays before his, but she's younger. There's ways to do it, but anytime you introduce relativity and interstellar travel and time travel into fiction, especially fiction where they cross the galaxies a lot, it creates a problem. And I applaud them for trying to stick to something that is based on science, but you bring up a lot more questions than answers when you have characters routinely flying across the solar system. So I like the original Silvery origin that's presented here because it doesn't have that problem. She was born after Krypton's doom. She is just younger. And I think that works best in a lot of ways. Now, there's some advantages to having her be born before Krypton's doom and witnessing Krypton's doom, because it does add some pathos to the character. It is interesting. There's a reason why they keep that point in most modern retellings of the story. But I'll argue that Kara's original origin isn't any less heavy and doesn't like the pathos of others. She still watched as her people were dying because she was on the planet as everybody was dying of radiation poisoning. There are multiple panels in both of these stories where we see Kara sobbing because she has to leave her family behind as they are dying of radiation poisoning. Now, this is Code Era comics, Mort Wessinger era Code Era comics specifically. They were showing the super graphic stuff. The sniffles are pretty comedic in how cheesy they are presented. But it is a traumatic event. It has pathos. And there's a reason why Tom King pretty much takes this story and modifies it slightly, but we still see this play out with Tom King. There's a reason why you go back to that origin. It is very, very traumatic to watch your people die, your only family, the survivors of your race, die slowly of radiation poisoning as you are sent as the only survivor. It's traumatic. She's alive and cognitive. It ain't like Kal-El, who's a baby and not aware what happens. She knows what happens either way. Is there a benefit of her being of Krypton first? Yeah, probably. I think it's cool. I mean, I like that origin. There's a reason it sticks, but it ain't like it's any less heavy. So I don't know. I like these stories. I like that origin as it's presented. It's very simple, very, very basic. It does a great job. I think it's a well-constructed, well-presented origin. Now, one thing I also really like in both these stories, is Kara's naivety and earnestness. So if you've never read a Silver Age Supergirl story, you have to first. They are delightful. The central premise is this. When she arrives on Earth, Clark has no idea what to do with her. She obviously meets Clark right away because Superman sees this rocket flying. He goes to investigate and he's like, holy crap. And she comes out of the ship wearing the Superman outfit, but dressed as, it's Kara's Supergirl outfit, the skirt and everything. And in that one, it's implied it's not a family crest or anything special. It's not the symbol of House of L. It is straight up they want, like, Jor-El seen it through a telescope, a hot super telescope from far away, and they designed the costume so he would know, so Superman would know that she is, of him. She's Kryptonian, and that's the Superman symbol. So yeah, it's weird. But that's beside the point. So Superman's like, you're cool and all, but you got all these powers, and you're a teenage girl. And it's worth pointing out, Al Plastino in this first story, in Action Comics 252, he draws her to look like a child. The Supergirl that you see in that story is a small child. She is a teenage girl, young teenage girl at best. She is drawn and illustrated perfectly as a 14-year-old girl compared to Superman. It's really well done cartooning because it really draws home the age difference. So this issue is Clark can't raise his niece because it is weird to him. Also, it's just how the era works. There's code. This is the code era. You can't have an unmarried bachelor raising a teenage daughter or a teenage ward. I don't know why. They could do it with Batman, but they can't do it with Superman. I don't know. Even then, at this point in time, I think Batman was having to have Aunt Harriet around. So I guess there is some reason. But that's beside the point. Superman can't raise Kara on his own. So he decides he's going to put Kara in an orphanage. Not just put her in an orphanage. Basically says you cannot use your powers at all in public. You cannot be publicly known as Supergirl because you're going to be my secret weapon. And it honestly makes sense. Superman gets in trouble quite a bit. There's things that happen to Superman, especially Silver Age Superman. He gets brainwashed a lot. He gets almost killed a few times. There's times where he may need help, and it's good to have, Kara on hand, have that trump card in the back pocket. So I kind of get that. But it's funny, he makes her go to an orphanage. Now, this is also where the funniness of the Silver Age comes into play. There's no Kents. The Kents are dead in the Silver Age. So if you're one of these stories and you're like, man, what's going on here? Why is she in an orphanage? Why is Supergirl living in an orphanage? It's because there's no Kents. And Superman can't raise his ward of a teenage daughter, teenage cousin, so he sticks her in an orphanage. And it's just so weird. And that's it. That's largely the first story. It's largely, hey, the first issue, Action Comics 252, it's, hey, sticking her in the orphanage. She takes the name Linda Lee on her own. It's also really weird that we have an orphanage because in the 1950s, but the late 50s, what you think of as an orphanage largely stops existing. The notion of a U.S. orphanage kind of ends post-World War II. The end of the Great Depression, post-World War II, there's a reformation of the orphanage system. You would put kids in foster care like we see today. They actually go into foster care. Modern orphan children and kids that are taken out of their home are usually sent to foster families, or at best, at worst, a group home situation, not a true orphanage. It's just not how it works. It hasn't worked that way even by to this time the story is published. The notion of an orphanage pretty much just persists as fiction due to things like Little Orphan Annie and Superman. Stuff like these kind of stories keep the orphanage story going. There are orphanages in other countries, but in the United States, they don't really exist. So yeah, The Secret of the Super Orphan, I also included here because it's a good character piece. It refines the origin. So Action Comics 253, it just largely refines a little bit of the origin. It adds, why does she make the dress? It shows a little bit more of the emotional pathos, at least as much as they got. The difference is we get a different artist at this point. And this artist, Jim Mooney, would actually be synonymous with Supergirl for most of the early Silver Age appearances. Otto Binder obviously is writing Supergirl. He's pretty much the main Supergirl writer for long periods of time. And Jim Mooney is the main Supergirl artist. Like I said, she has a long stretch in Action Comics as the second feature for a long period of time. So they work together for a while. Jim Mooney does a really good job, and obviously Otto Binder is great here too. But the reason I picked the refined origin is that we actually see kind of how the foster adoption system works in this world, and this story kind of comes up several times. So in this situation, first off, there's a lot of orphans in this orphanage. A lot. There's 20. That seems like a high number for some reason. It's not the point. Supergirl helps a boy get adopted by a family of farmers, because the whole time, almost every one of these, time to get adopted, Supergirl's like, I can't get adopted. I'm going to do everything I can not to get adopted. But these other kids deserve some happiness. Let them get adopted. Supergirl's like, I can't be adopted. They may learn my superpowers, and that would upset Cousin Cal. I better not do that, so I'm not going to get adopted. I'm going to help this kid. So he's trying to help this little country boy who loves outdoors to be adopted. And they found a farmer family, and the farm family loves this kid. But they realize the farmers can't afford adoption. They means test the adoption, which is not too far off. Actually, that works in real life to this day. It's kind of weird. But either way, so Supergirl decides she's going to help the farmers raise money. Now, how does Supergirl decide to help the farmers raise enough money so they can show they can adopt this kid? It isn't by helping them farm more. No. She instead does it the most ridiculous way in the most Silver Age way possible, by digging a tunnel to Italy from the farm and leaving a giant telescope. And oh, by the way, she digs in a certain way with her heat vision and the friction from the movement that it creates a melted, molten, solid wall, a solid tunnel, so it's reinforced, and creates a tunnel and provides a giant telescope so that you can sit at this family's farm and presumably upstate New York, Connecticut, because again, we're talking Superboy era, Superman's pre-Silver Age. It's kind of like New Metropolis is actually there. It's complicated. It doesn't matter. It's a rural area up north in the Northeast. Either way, you could stand at this farm in like Connecticut and look through a telescope to see the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy for like $2. It's insane. And all this is because, one, she's inspired by something Superman did with like a dinosaur story. I don't know if that's actually a Superman story. It's hard to find out because all this stuff is easily available. But two, she does this because she can't be seen. She can't let the farmers see her. So she does all this crazy stuff. So the farmers start hustling money and they get more money. And for some reason, when they go to adopt the boy, they sell the farm. Why? Because the tunnel doesn't work, by the way. The tunnel does collapse after a couple days, which is good for the best, probably. I don't imagine that's good for the ecology and geology of the planet. But they still sell the farm. Ow. So she's not a farmer anymore. So she's like, oh man, these people aren't farmers. They're not going to like this country outdoorsy boy we have here. Dang, I better teach this boy some other life skills. You know what? And what she does is ridiculous. Now, there's a cold open to the story, and it's her with a boy as a magician, and she's like, they don't know I'm actually Supergirl. Let's have these cold open. And that's it. That's instead of like giving the boy, like, hey, they'll love you anyway, giving him a new skill. No. She helps the boy fake a magic show. She stages. This is a 10-page story. This all happens in 10 pages. And she does this all sight unseen because, again, she's Superman's secret weapon. She can't be seen. And she does it all. And it's insane. It's delightfully weird and delightfully fun. And they are really good. One of the best things you can do is check out the DC's finest Supergirl collection they put out. What is it technically called here? Supergirl, the Girl of Steel. DC Finest collection. I mean, it ain't cheap, but you're going to get like 40 Supergirl stories because they're all backups and stuff in these different issues of Action Comics. We're talking like, about 36, 36 Supergirl stories. And that's not counting some of the second issues, like she shows up in like Jimmy Olsen and Superman's girlfriend, Lois Lane. Highly recommend checking out that book, but that's the other thing. That's well worth your time. It's a little ridiculous how crazy those stories are, and I love them. So that brings us to ranking this story. So again, at the beginning, as I said in the intro of the show here on the Never Ending Battle, the Never Ending Battle part is figuring out the best Superman, or in this case, Superman family title of all time, best Superman story of all time. Now we have a list here of 15 titles. The greatest Superman story of all time is currently Superman Birthright, the best origin, I should say. The fifth greatest Superman story of all time is Superman number 76, the first meeting between Superman and Batman. That's right, we're talking late Golden Age, early Silver Age. The 10th best story of all time is the Elseworlds title, Speeding Bullets. Basically, what if Clark Kent was raised by the Wayne family? It's got some issues. It's good, and it's got some problems. But laying down on the bottom of the list, and by default, the worst Superman story of all time, it's the Elseworld Superman Cal. AKA, what if Superman was in a low fantasy setting, and it has an awful thing that does to Lois Lane. It is the worst. Alright, so where do we rank this story? That is the tougher question, because it's a good story, it's a fun story, it's important, but at the same time, it's not like the best Superman story or Superman family story of all time. It's not the best Wonder Woman, best Supergirl story. But let's see. Looking at the list, I do think it's better than, I would likely read this again above the world's finest first meeting. I do love Batman meeting Superman, and it's a fun story. It's definitely better than that. I think it's better than Devil Amnesia. I'm pretty sure Mark Waid would agree with me on that. he would say this is probably much better than. The question is it better than John Byrne's Man of Steel at number 3? See, John Byrne's Man of Steel is not the best origin. Obviously, it ranks a little high on the list because the list is small right now. And it's not bad. I've come to appreciate more the Byrne era, but it's still not great. There's a lot of things about that origin I don't like. The American jingoism in there is toxic. And as we'll see later tonight, they do a lot to reverse a lot of these Man of Steel changes. So I do think this might be better than Man of Steel. But Man of Steel is important, and I don't get me wrong, I do respect it. I just think this story is even more important. And what's crazy is Superman Action Comics 252 is also not just the first appearance of Supergirl. It's the first appearance. We're not ranking on this episode. It's going to be another episode. It's the first appearance of Metallo. And that's wild to think about for a few minutes. It's like if there were, Metallo is not super high on the list of rogues, but he's pretty dang high. He shows up almost everything. But I still think this is better than Man of Steel, just slightly. Man of Steel's good, but I think this is better. And I don't know, John Byrne may not agree with me on that. I don't give a crap. John Byrne sucks as a human being. So if he doesn't like me, he doesn't like me. I'll live with it because I can live. All right, so we'll put it here at the new number 3. And we're going to call it Supergirl, the Super Orphan from Krypton. And that brings us to our second story of the night, and probably the most popular one for most people on listening to the podcast. And that is Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow. Writer is Tom King. Artist is Bilquis Evely. I'm trying my best here. Colorist is Matt Lopez. Letterer is Clayton Clowes. And editors are Brittany Helgier and Jamie S. Rich. Published between August of 2021 through April of 2022 with the DC Infinite Frontier banner. It matters. As for the story, it's Kara's 21st birthday, and she is celebrating it by going to a Red Sun world to, basically get plastered, so she doesn't have to think about all the trauma of her lost world. While there, she is recruited by a young Ruthie to get revenge against Krim of the Yellow Hills for killing her father. Kara only agrees to go on the mission after Krim poisons Crypto and steals Kara's ship. Together, Kara and Ruthie travel the galaxy on the trail of Krim and learn in the process about how to handle grief, trauma, and the hollow nature of revenge itself. This one's a tough one, folks, mainly because this comic has become well regarded. Heck, it's the large basis for the most recent Supergirl film. I found it to be a mixed bag, though, and there's probably a reason why a lot of people came out of that Supergirl movie feeling a little empty. So first off, we get Tom, I'm sorry he became a CIA asset and invaded Iraq, King. You can't talk about Tom King without talking about his history before comics writing. I mean, you can't. He can't. I mean, he can't separate himself from that. Either way, he's not a bad writer, but he's not as smart as others seem to think he is, or how much he thinks he is. His books typically do focus a lot on trauma. And that's fine because it is a relatable human experience. The problem is that it often becomes so heavy-handed that you cannot escape it at all. Its gravity is so crushing that you cannot avoid it. Then you combine that with his tendency to utilize the most formalist 9-panel grid. It is a tedious experience at times to read some Tom King comics. Revelatory, because you are reading about the human trauma and you connect to these fictional characters in a way that you didn't think was possible. He speaks of these atrocities, kind of a first world experience. He learned that maybe he did some bad things, and that's the basis for a lot of his comics. Like, hey, maybe we can go into things with good intentions and bad things still happen, or sometimes bad people just do bad things, and how do you deal with that? He knows how to work an emotional moment unlike other writers that we'll talk about today. He earns those moments. Those big heart swells and teardrops are often earned and well placed in his stories. He can pace a story for the most part pretty well. Those 9-panel formalist grids and stuff work really well. His comics are well constructed, well fundamentally done. The problem is his characterizations are often misplaced. He's often accused of putting square pegs into round holes, making characters fit the narrative he's trying to tell instead of trying to tell a narrative with the character. Like Supergirl being traumatized and basically going on a true grit story as Rooster Cragborn across the galaxies. It's weird. She's only 21 to do the Rooster Cragborn stuff, but you know what? It works. He's making the character do something that she normally isn't. Also kind of weird he plays around different things. This is a more genre story. So let's talk about this one. So Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow is less of a superhero story and more of a hard traveling hero story. Like I said, it's True Grit. He's open about it. It's True Grit. The novel, movies, True Grit. They're hard traveling heroes seeing the galaxy and all the horrors that Krim and his friends, the brigands, have wrought on the world, or the galaxy, I should say. But there's times where it's not. I mean, it's an unconventional story. It's kind of hard traveling hero stuff doesn't always resonate with me in comic reading. I don't know. That's a me thing. I like road trip movies, but road trip comics can be kind of a chore. I don't know. It's a me personally. And I mean, it came across here. The first 2 issues of the story were chug. They were a chore to get through. But I won't lie, issue 3 hits, and it got me hooked in because there was a mystery in that issue. And the mystery wasn't going to be good, how the solution went, what happened. And man, because that's where you see the world that sold one race out to the brigands, and they committed genocide, and they were complacent. They let what they viewed as a lesser member of their race, or a lesser race, die because they were too afraid to die, and they were too poor to pay off the brigands. And it was dark. It is a dark secret under this seeming utopia. It's hinted at throughout the issue, and when we get that reveal, and Kara's subsequent righteous fury, it's phenomenal. Her righteous indignation towards these people of this world, it's great. It's one of the best things. Just rage and fury. Issue 4, we see just a bunch of montage. It's essentially a montage issue of them going after Krim because he's now joined the brigands, they believe, and they're following the path of destruction, and the brigands go on to world. And we see Kara and Ruthie help tend to these people, specifically Kara. Kara's over here like listening to this awful story of how Krim killed this poor man and his friend for no reason, violently. It's implied that he's worse than the brigand. The rest of the brigands are bad. This dude is on another level. He's like the LeBron James of this stuff. It's ugly, and we see all this play out. And we get all these insights of Kara being a servant, helping others. She digs a mass graves so this poor man can say goodbye to his daughter as he's trying to build all these graves for his daughter. We see her act as like a sin eater of sorts, trying to shield Ruthie from this horror of this world, of this pain. There's a scene in the issue where she has to go into a temple that has a recording to verify it's Krim that's actually doing all this stuff, and she won't let Ruthie in. Ruthie's like, I can take it, I can handle it. She's like, no, you can't. So she goes in there. Kara goes in on her own, and she just sits there. She has to watch all this video, and she sees it. She absorbs it. She verifies it's Krim, and it eats her up. All she can do is go into space and scream into the void. It's good. It's so good. That 3rd and 4th issue are great. The 5th issue is fantastic because it's the Green Sun issue. If you've seen the movie and what we're talking about, but the difference is she's on this planet with Ruthie, and she can't do anything. Kara can't do anything. So Ruthie has to stand alone against dinosaurs and other monsters trying to kill her because it's actually a trap for Superman. I'm assuming the Superman Revenge Squad. I don't know if it's actually a real story. I gotta find that out. I think it is. I think it feels like it's a real Silver Age story. Then in issue 6, we get a retelling of the origin of Supergirl with marrying the elements of the 2004 origin with the Silver Age. I have not read the new 52 origin, so this may not be that much different. But we see this origin change. We see Kara living on Krypton before it explodes, and we can see her go through her life as she's in school and she's looking out the window and talks constantly about the colors of the leaves, the red leaves, and it's so good. This is the time I feel like her being on Krypton first and living to see Krypton's doom pays off, because we get instead of the lead foil that we see in the Silver Age origin, it becomes big lead sheet that all the people of Argos is hammering into the planet to survive, and they're dying in the process. They're dying of radiation poison, kryptonite poisoning, but also they're just dying of exhaustion. And she's still going. She's one of the last ones that can hammer it all in there. As she watches her mom just get decimated by the kryptonite poisoning, die of radiation poisoning. We see her father's dying of the poisoning, and as the lead gets destroyed by the meteorites, it's all for naught. And there's this death march against time. It's really emotional and really powerful, and this is where Tom King is excelling. And the fact that issue 6 is a large rewrite made at the last minute because the editor turned down the story, the original plan was crazy, because it's probably the best issue of the series. Issue 7-8 are climax of the tensions with Krim as Ruthie and Krim finally come to terms and Supergirl takes care of the brigands. It's The conflict between revenge and justice is palpable here. It's well executed at times, but it drags in others. The art by Evely steals the show and obviously is the main draw. And I think this is part of the reason why people probably left the movie feeling hollow, because the movie changes a lot of the elements from the book. And that's from another show, that's another thing to talk about. But we see, when you come out of that movie, you're like, man, the movie didn't work. It's because it lacks the visuals. This story is not, I mean, it's well executed in times, and there's moments where it really works. You hear me praise it vigorously. But the main draw is the art. A lot of these moments hit because of the art. Evely has this detailed, tight line work and uses rendering to great effect to help create this world, this vibrant world. And this is obviously complemented by Matt Lopez's colors. Altogether, these art team puts together this lush comic that carries the weight of a story. The emotional beats work as well as they do because it's a combination of Evely's expressions and body language and the tone set by Lopez's colors. There's like the sense of cold and drab feel of space on the charter bus in that second issue is one of the best things that comes to my mind here when I think of this coloring scheme. It's just cold, and there's emptiness, and the colors, like the beautiful reds, the greens, how the colors of Krypton look different from the other worlds, how the other worlds look similar but yet different from each other. It's so well done. The character designs of this main cast and aliens are just top notch. Supergirl is obviously Clark in her classic look with a full length top, obviously, not doing the midriff stuff. We're beyond that. And long red skirt. Again, we're not doing the mini skirt and midriff combination we'd see Michael Turner introduce here. The bigger part, I think, is Ruthie. Ruthie is the main focus of the story. The story is told through her narrative, and we could see her change her appearance. Ruthie starts off wearing this thick coat with her father's murder weapon, beautiful sword, this ornate weapon, and these piercing violet, they're just piercing. And by the end of the series, we see Ruthie come out of her shell, grow under her own. She sheds the coat. She opts to don just a simple tunic and pants, and in the process becomes from this withdrawn, kind of sheltered individual who is committed to getting revenge because nobody else seems to want to, trying to make it right, confusing justice for revenge. But in the process, as she goes through the story and we learn compassion from Kara, she becomes more vulnerable. It's simple storytelling through costumes that I love in here, and it's so well done. The design for Krim, by the way, is interesting. If you've seen the movie, Krim looks totally different from the book. The book, Krim is just like a barbarian looking dude. He's just the dude in a loincloth with a sword and maybe a bow and arrow. Crazy different. But he's interesting. He's very low tech in his really alien world. Now, as I mentioned a second ago, the story, because it is told through a narrative device via Ruthie, it works in places. When it works well, but when it doesn't, it doesn't. The story is told via narration in the past tense, as it's a part of what's implied to be Ruthie's novel. Again, it's a True Grit reference. And the story focuses a lot of Supergirl being defined through Ruthie's eyes. It provides a strong narrative device. It can tell a lot about the narrator as well as the subject. It's a very common tool. I remember seeing it in something like Superman for All Seasons, where each chapter has a different person describing Superman to them. But here it's done by just one person. We see Ruthie. And we see Ruthie change and how she learns to be a better person and learn to accept, she learns to accept justice. So one of my favorite things about this comic is that it's not afraid of the Silver Age bonkers. It's not afraid to be weird. There's literally a part where Comet the Super Horse shows up out of nowhere in the final 3 issues. He's a major part of the final 3 issues. There's a red kryptonite angel in the second issue where Kara is underpowered because she's still under the effects of the red sun, so she finds red kryptonite casually. Some people apparently take it as a street drug. So she takes red kryptonite and becomes like this giant fiery red kryptonite angel to help save this transport ship they're in. It's fantastic. Evely illustrates the spectacle of it all in amazing ways. Heck, the pocket wormhole that Krim throws is some bullcrap. But it gave us the green sun in the amazing issue with the issue 6 origin, again with Comet showing up out of nowhere in the 7th issue, outrunning the second wormhole. Sorry, the 6th issue, allowing Comet, allowing her to outrun the wormhole. Crazy. For all the absurdity and embrace of the Silver Age shenanigans, there are even quiet moments here that is really well. King and Evely come together to produce some of these moments of just character building. They allow for the story to breathe and reflect at times. There, early on in the second issue, we see a hand washing scene where, Ruthie knows how to bathe and clean herself, but she's never been where water's readily available, so she does not really washed her hands. So Kara shows her how to do it. And it's simple. It shows Kara as kind of like this servant who's compassion and care, and it's a sense of vulnerability as we see Ruthie slowly shed her rugged exterior that's, of a hardened world and a traumatized world, and starts opening up to others. And as I mentioned, the Library of the Dead scene is just one of the best ones in the whole book. They show so much about the characters without saying a lot at all at the same time. They don't have to say it, they just show it. And that's why I think King works best here, when King steps aside and let Evelyn do her thing. Now, obviously, King's helping there and part of the script, but it works together. It's the marriage of the two, and I think so. I seem like I'm praising the book pretty heavily. There are faults. The pacing, while it's mostly well done, because it's a hard traveling heroes type story, the pacing is all over the place. It's kind of rough. It's just parts of a drag for a little while. There's uneven stops and goes. There are too many fake outs, for example. There are way too many fake outs and swerves dealing with Krim. There's parts where they're about to get Krim, and then he throws a pocket black hole at them. Twice! It happens twice. Look, Krim sucks. All my friends hate Krim. Dude's evil. He's just a dude. He's just a dude with a sword. I know they have to give him a chance against Supergirl, a very angry Supergirl, and you have to do a couple fake outs, but gosh, it's literally back-to-back issues. It's really annoying, and I think the narration is not such at times, but King often can't get away from himself. He gets hung up on the structure of the story as a novel. This is, Ruthie's biography or kind of memoir of the event post-event, like when she's all over her life. And she's just talking, describing every little thing. And yeah, it's good at times, and it's essential in others, but it's excessive. And the narration just gets heavy. And then there's the ending. Okay, spoilers. I don't do a lot of spoilers, but they cannot talk about this book without talking about its ending. So fast forward ahead a little bit. Just give me like 2 minutes. So the story via narrations says early on, Ruthie says Kara kills Krim with the blade that Ruthie could not do it. However, it shows that Ruthie is literally an unreliable narrator because Kara spares Krim's life, instead opts to send him to the Phantom Zone for 150 years. Now, is unending bodily, ethereal torture humane? I don't know. But, the Phantom Zone is often probably the way we usually put characters that are just unrepentant at the time, and you don't want to kill, because it's a plot. It shows pretty early. Krim will do a lot of damage. He doesn't care. He's a monster. You cannot just lock that guy up. He's been locked up before he got out. So, and the book says Kara killed him, but she didn't. The book flash forwards to Kara returning with a newer costume, with Krypto in tow, returning to an elderly Ruthie, and they together free Krim from the Phantom Zone, because it's implied that Krim has repented, and Ruthie just whacks him in the head with the head of her cane, and a parallel to the death of her father, silhouetted by the sun. It's 5 panels, horizontal widescreen situation going on here. The characters are silhouetted by the sunset, and he falls over, just like her dad, except Krim's not dead. It's tumbled. I've been talking briefly in the movie because I want to save a longer discussion about them for another show. This is the most glaring change from the movie. In the movie, the biggest difference is she kills Krim in the movie. Kara kills Krim, and understandably, Krim is a monster. It's implied and shown that Krim is just awful, and her killing Krim is a choice. It doesn't bother me as much as it did in Man of Steel with Superman. And I think part of it is because we see Krim is just awful. However, the ending of the film undercuts the message about revenge and vengeance, and it ends up making the whole message ring hollow. It's like, you don't need to take vengeance, Ruthie. But she does. Kara does? I don't know. The comic is consistent in the messaging that revenge and vengeance is not the same as justice. And that's kind of a large theme for a lot of superheroes, but it's especially true here. There is tension and conflict from the heroes wrestling with their desire for justice and the need for some sort of revenge and conflating the two, but they're not the same. It isn't like Kara isn't thinking about it. That's kind of the point. Kara does think about killing Krim. She knows it would be easy. She could do it quickly, and no one would question her. But it's not what it needed. It needed to be justice, and justice is making sure he feels the pain of those times. He learns to repent and feels for it. The ending is the best part of the story to me. I fully expect King to have Kara killed Krim, because it makes sense, but he doesn't. But that's the part of the movie. I think the ending works in the book. But the end here, you have to read the pacing to get how dry it can be at times, and especially those first couple issues. There's moments when it sings well, but there's moments of just, geez, this guy keeps going. So the comic is good, but not great. and definitely not as great as Reputation. It's a familiar story about a hero helping a kid with revenge, but in reality teaching that revenge is a bitter fruit that will leave you empty. It's a story archetype that you use to tell larger stories, and this does to an extent, but it isn't transformational for the character. Kara doesn't learn anything from it. It's a Ruthie story, and that's fine. It uses it to define Kara as an outside person, but it isn't changing the definition of Kara. It's just defining her some more, and it's a good definition, but it's just that. The strengths of the story come from the art, which are just fantastic. How it defines Kara from outside of Superman. We don't see Superman at all in this story, and it works well. However, it doesn't redefine or add much to the new character besides consolidating a few of the origin stories. And yeah, don't get me wrong, I love those bits. They're no different than what we saw in the Silver Age, just some small tweaks for modern audiences. There's nothing wrong with a comic being okay. And honestly, that's Woman of Tomorrow's biggest sin. It's not living up to its reputation. It's okay. It's a solid evergreen Supergirl comic. It's definitely worth a read if you find it, especially in those DC compacts. Yeah, definitely check it out. Get the deluxe editions. They're really nice. Yeah, I would probably get the bigger edition because the art's really great. It's worth a read, but it's not the best comic ever. Definitely not the best Supergirl comic. It's good, but not great. Alright, so where does this fall on the list? And that's the tough one, because, man, it's a good story, but it's not perfect. Now, where does that go? I do think this is better than Dark Knight over Metropolis, at 7. Dark Knight Metropolis is a good story. It's the reintroduction of Batman and Superman, but the plot largely kind of is consequential to each other. It's better than that. Is it better than the Brainiac trilogy? That is a really good trilogy. Helps get Supergirl, actually gets Brainiac going. It kind of does some stuff with Supergirl, setting up, doesn't do anything directly with Supergirl, but ends up setting up Panic with the Skies, which is a big deal. Supergirl. I think it's better than Brainiac trilogy. It's not better than The World's Finest First Meeting in Superman Volume 1, number 76. That's a much better, much more important story. This is good, but not that important. So yeah, I think this is now the new number 6. Woman of Tomorrow. Not a bad showing for a comic that I'm largely cold on. It's not bad. Like, I didn't feel bad at reading it. It wasn't terrible. It wasn't as good as I was promised. That's always never fun. And our last story of the night, Superman Batman, the Supergirl from Krypton, originally printed as Superman Batman number 8 through 13, with writer Jeph Loeb, artist Michael Turner, with colorist Peter Steigerwald, letters by Richard Starkings of Comicraft, editors Eddie Berganza and Tom Palmer Jr. This was originally published from May to October of 2004. Let's try to keep this simple here, folks. So Superman and Batman have just taken down President Lex and are still cleaning up the aftermath of the Kryptonite asteroid that has hit Earth, when from the wreckage comes Superman's long-lost cousin, Kara Zor-El. While Superman's quick to welcome and trust Kara, Batman is far more suspicious. And after Wonder Woman helps abduct Kara to train with the Amazons on Themyscira, Darkseid makes his move and takes Kara for his own, to be a member of, assumingly, the Furies. It is up to Batman, Superman, Wonder Woman, and Big Barda to save the young Kryptonian before she can be corrupted by Darkseid himself. Oh boy, okay. Jeph Loeb has a history of doing some awful, pretty racist things as his capacity of head of Marvel TV, especially in regards to people of Asian descent. You can look those up. Even if you overlooked those awful histories, I can't do it myself, but if we were to somehow separate that, you have to admit that Jeph Loeb's writing is not the best. I say this knowing that one of Jeph Loeb's comics is one of my favorite Superman comics of all time. We've yet to cover. But Jeph Loeb writing is not great, folks. We have not talked about Jeph Loeb yet on the show. We have another episode of that coming up soon. But he famously... Jeph Loeb's writing is bad because he famously does not believe in earning emotional moments. He will pull big twists and heartbreaks without any build-up. They just happen. He tends to over-narrate, especially in stuff like Superman Batman. And that series features dueling narrations from the leads. Both Superman and Batman get their own narration box on almost every page together. He tends to be very repetitive in his work, Jeph Loeb does. Jeph Loeb tends to restate the same thing from issue to issue, which is fine. Loeb loves to randomly just quote things that sound profound but often lack the context. Some of his issues of Our World at War just straight up quotes President FDR. Okay. He sounds profound if you have not read many comics. If you read a Loeb comic and you're like, man, this is amazing, why do they all write like this? It's because you've not read many comics. If that's like your first comic ever read. Basically, he makes comics for normies. Nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't help you with the rankings and kind of can't separate art from the artist here sometimes. So I say this because all that because this arc of Superman Batman showcases all of Loeb's writing faults. The mountain of narration and repetitive phrases are exhausting. If I have to read Kara's ship instructions about how she's a treasure to your world, or how Batman will do anything that needs to be done one more time, I will scream. I get to the point of intentional repetition for great effect. I employ it in my own speech and writing skills. I know what it is, but good lord does it come off as trite when Loeb does it all the time. Hell, I could think his characterizations are often reductive as well. His Superman is played way too naive and protective to a fault where he's willingly going to try to choke an Amazonian, specifically Artemis, because she almost hurt Kara, a woman who is literally bulletproof, with a sword. Sorry, it's so dumb. Batman becomes too suspicious of everybody, and Wonder Woman is way too aggressive. This is at a time specifically in history where the Trinity is at odds with one another, and this whole issue, they're at odds with one another with Kara. It definitely becomes clear that this is the basis for the fractured Trinity we see going into Infinite Crisis, which is not far from this point. Actually, I think it's about simultaneously, and it's definitely the basis for the fractured Trinity we see going into Infinite Crisis, which is largely being set up at this time. It's next year's story at this moment. Yeah, Identity Crisis broke the Trinity, but the foundation was already shaking and starting to wobble. Here's this evidence right here. Now, for Supergirl, Kara is a non-entity in this story, so not only do we get a reductive view of the Trinity, we get a reductive Supergirl. She's a non-entity in this story. She's merely an object that they're fighting over. She is the definition of a sexy lamp. She has zero to no agency in the whole story, which is, I get some people like the fictional characters that have no agency. You got to present the agency. You got to make it seem like she has a say. She does not ever have hardly a say in this story. She's basically being told what to do by two grown men in tights, or occasionally an Amazonian, or at worst, an ancient evil god from another part of the universe. She has zero agency. She has none. She is a sexy lamp that keep hidden in the Fortress of Solitude or on Themyscira, or for Darkseid to kidnap. She is a MacGuffin more than anything else. So when we do get a little bit of characterization, it's after she's been kidnapped by Darkseid, and the whole time she starts asking this angst-ridden question of Darkseid's influence was actually corrupting her, or was it just bringing something that was already there? This "am I actually evil" characterization will plague the character for the better part of 2 years until like Mark Waid, Jeff Johns, and Sterling Gates gets to fixing it, and it's aggravating. Sorry for the little rant there. But on top of all this flat characterization, we also get some of the most whack pacing you've ever seen in a story. The story doesn't know if it wants to be a Darkseid story or a Supergirl story, and it causes itself to be torn down the middle in this sense. Neither side is given the proper time to breathe, and it causes both of them to be weaker as a process. Ultimately, I do question why is Darkseid in this story at all. Admittedly, it's been a while since I've read Public Enemies. I think there's something that goes on in Public Enemies. It could also be disconnecting Our Worlds at War. This might be picking up on a story I have not read in almost 15 years. And I need to look into it because there's references to Doomsday, because that's another part of the story. There's a part where, okay, let's give the pacing. Let's just back up for a second. The story starts off with him finding Kara on the spaceship. She does some stuff nude because Michael Turner can't help himself. And then she's introduced as, hey, it's his cousin. The second issue is she gets kidnapped. Kara gets kidnapped by the Amazonians to go to Themyscira. That's a problem. Third issue, she's on Themyscira, but Darkseid makes his move. Darkseid sends a bunch of clones of sorts of Doomsday to the Themyscira, and they just destroy them, no problem. That's going to be an issue. They start burying Doomsdays here in like the next 2 years at DC, but that's beside the point. Then we get the fourth issue. They got, okay, we gotta go to Apocalypse. So they go to Big Barda to get a mother box and get a boom tube, and they go to Apocalypse and they get captured. And then like we find out that she's evil. Kara became evil because of Darkseid. But why does Darkseid care? We don't care. Loeb doesn't do a good job at all explaining why Darkseid's here because of that. And this fifth issue is Batman. Batman threatens up a little Apocalypse. That's fine. But he's like, I'm going to blow her up if you don't let her go. And Darkseid's like, yeah, sure. Then he shows up and still tries to kill her. And then the sixth issue is them fighting over it. And yeah, it ends on an okay note, but it doesn't make any sense. None of it, it's a roller coaster from one net point to the next, but each of the point, it's a boring roller coaster at times because there's no substance. There's no time for any plot point to breathe. No stakes have been made. Loeb does not care about building the foundation. He does not care about building any kind of stakes. He just wants to tell these big story beats, these set pieces, and does a poor job of getting you from point A to point B. It's dull at times. It's very much kind of like a Michael Bay moment, but at least Michael Bay puts character moments in his movies. It's so bad at times. What's more frustrating is he can do it. He has moments where Loeb has done these, like, build the moments, emotional beats. And before one person goes in the comments and say, well, Jeph Loeb lost his son, Jeph Loeb's son was still alive at this point in time. His son, tragically, his son passes away. And yeah, it does mess up Loeb. And it's fair to say that. But Jeph Loeb's son does not pass away for another, year in time. This comic's whack regardless of that, and they cannot put that on the death of a child. Ridiculous. And it's obvious that the plot is just a mess, because when you even look at the movie adaptation when they did this for animated movies, they called it Apocalypse, but it's spelled wrong. That's annoying, man. I talked about that today with my family. Either way, there are good moments here. I won't be too harsh on it. There's moments where Loeb does kind of work. I do like his Superman at times. His unconditional acceptance of Kara is great. The Barn era started to basically erode away, and this, along with Birthright, which we kind of start seeing Birthright get pulled in here, it works. And I think while Loeb's Batman is not great at times, especially here, oh god, is he terrible here. He's just awfully paranoid. The stuff about Jason Todd works, because they basically try to explain Batman's caginess by going, and Superman brings it up, Jason. He talks about Jason Todd, just calls him Jason. And Batman sees that as a failure. But it does not help fully to explain why he has friction with Superman over Kara. It's just because Loeb couldn't be bothered to give a crap about it, because we have to have, this big set piece with all the doomsdays. Ugh. Now, let's talk about the art for a minute. For comic fans of my generation, what I'm about to say is very shocking, but I do not personally care for Michael Turner's art. I remember in the mid-2000s how much the manga anime influence has art. I'm no different. I drew a lot of manga anime influenced stuff. Turner's art was definitely influenced by this. You can see it in his body line work and his body anatomy. However, it's not seen in the page compositions. All the stuff that makes manga interesting is the panel work. There's none of that. There's no dynamics. The body language is not very good either. The women are all slender to have a mile-long abdomen, yet feel very thin, paper thin. Yeah, they are thin in the waist, but also they just feel like they have no substance. There's no body there. Meanwhile, the men are all chiseled and have these Giga Chad jawlines that are just ridiculous. I don't know if he's trying to do like an Ed McGuinness thing, but Ed McGuinness is not. There's no real diversity ultimately in the body styles, just heights. The difference between Wonder Woman and Kara is not much, just body style, just heights and hair color. Turner doesn't do much in terms of expression either, because there's no real sense of tension, excitement, angst, or anything. And it's forcing Loeb's writing to do a lot of the weight, carry a lot of the weight. And that's not good, because man, that's a structurally flawed system at this point. And that's not even touching on the weirder stuff. There's some weird sexualization of Kara in the story, just off-putting. Turner dresses Kara, and when he does dress her, as some sort of sex pot, not a 16-year-old girl. She has a thong that is visible for several issues, and when she's corrupted by Darkseid, she's presented as a weirdly sexual object. I don't mind the midriff Supergirl costume as much as others, but I just don't care how much she's drawn to be like this grown adult when she's 16. She's there for somebody's visual preference, and not hey, she's a teenage girl, guys. Maybe not make her look like an adult. As you probably gathered from my ranting, this comic's not good. There's a lot of fault here, mostly because it's just Loeb. The pacing's awful, the story's not good, but it's not a terrible comic, because as much as Loeb repeats himself and characterizes the principal cast in such an ugly way, outside of the decision to make Kara oddly sexualized, which is not endemic to this book, it's found in a lot of comics, especially of this era. When you put that aside, the book's not very offensive. The art's not it for me. I think it's dull and boring. There's not much there to be going home about. I mean, rest in peace, Michael Turner. I know the guy's sorely missing, gone too soon. I like his covers sometimes. Then there's some interesting visuals, but it's limited to more of the toyetic designs, specifically like the spaceships and Batman. I don't like his Darkseid design either, gosh. I don't care for when artists try to update Darkseid, because it just looks terrible, and spoilers, it's no different here. I cannot really recommend this comic, but I can't say it's the worst ever. There's nothing bad like we see in the Superman Cowl. So let's go into the rank. So this is definitely towards the bottom of the list. Is this better or worse than the Sweet Dreams, Superman number 65? Superman Batman number 65, the Halloween issue. It's worse than that. Like, Sweet Dreams is boring. I don't know, maybe it's more important. And I got Secret Origin from Jeff Johns lower than that. And I think Secret Origin from Jeff Johns is better. I read that more time than this, and I will read it more. It's not as bad as Cal. Superman Cal, I love Superman Cal places, but then the rape of Lois Lane, it's just offensive to the point where I can't do it. It's such a bad story because of that. It ruins the story at that point, and to the point where I cannot in good faith recommend it to anybody. So yeah, this is bad. This would be the new number, let's see here, 18. It's not the worst Superman, number 17. It's not the worst Superman story of all time, but man, it's not very good. I get it's important. Like, yeah, reintroduces Kara. It's not a very good Kara story. It's not a very bad Supergirl story. It's a good Superman story? No, it's a very bad, mediocre Superman story. Is it a good Batman story? No, it's a terrible Batman story, I think. Is it a good Wonder Woman story? Ew, no. I'm not even talking about him killing Harbinger for no reason. Ugh, God, this comic. Every time I think about it, more and more I think about it, the more I'm like, this is not very good, guys. And that's it for this week's episode of The Never-Ending Battle. Now, the show releases most Fridays on your podcasting platform of choice. You can also find companion articles for this episode with comic art and other relevant material in the show notes or on extremelyuncanny.com. You can follow the show at NEBSuperman at bluesky.social over on Blue Sky, obviously. You can also find my comic reviews on the Comics Beat each Wednesday for both Marvel Rundown and the Wednesday Comic Reviews. If you like the show, be sure to rate and review it and tell a friend. It does really help us out and get the show's reach and growing. Next time, we're going to look at some Joker Superman stories. Should be a lot of fun and a real laugh. Alright, I'm Jordan and I'm signing off, and as always, never surrender in the battle for a better tomorrow. Take care.